Joining us on the Boardwalk on the hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Frank Klose of the Phillies mailbag joins us as he always does to get into the Phillies. And, of course, Frank, you know, the biggest news today has to be Mike Trout. And it looks like he's probably not coming to Philadelphia now. So, you know, before we get to the mailbag, I got to get your perspective on not as much just the contract, because obviously the contract, the numbers are gargantuan. But for a lot of people who believed deep down inside that Mike Trout would be a Philly, it seems like now that becomes a lot less likely, does it not?
Yeah, it's a little bit disappointing. Everybody had their hopes and dreams that the local boy would come home. And, you know, even at spring training the other day, I was talking to a young lady whose family owned a bar in Millville for years, and they know the Trouts, and she was saying things like, oh, it's never about the money with him. He always wanted to come home. So people really had in their heart of hearts that Mike Trout would be coming back home. And it looked like in this situation, you know, Mike Trout, you can't fault him for sticking with this organization. You know, it's honorable that somebody would actually spend their whole career with one team, especially somebody of that magnitude. And if you're the Angels, you probably don't want to spend the next 2 years with everybody speculating about what might happen to Mike Trout. So they really stepped up and got something done. And that's pretty impressive on the Angels' part because, you know, somebody like Trout could go to free agency and he would probably get more money than this, even though, as you said, it's gargantuan. But he's going to be under contract with the Angels for 12 more years. That means he'll be just about 40, and his career will probably be over. The Angels might be eating a couple of years at the end, like they are for Albert Pujols. But you know, he came up an Angel, and it's I guess in some way it's still refreshing to see that a player might actually spend his whole career with one team.
There's a lot of conjecture about why Trout signed this contract. And I think one of the interesting theories being put out there, Frank, is the fact that the Bryce Harper comments may have lit a fire under the Angels to make this deal and get it done. Do you think that's true? That you think there was maybe the Angels looked around and said, doggone it, we can't let this guy even get the free agency. We got to cut this off before it gets that far.
Yeah, I can understand why one might say that. But I never really thought at any point that the Angels owner would not see Trout go without a fight. So when you think about the right time to do the deal, history has shown over recent years that if you're not going to be able to re-sign a star player, you try to trade him and get something back. Now the Angels are at a real crossroads right now. They need to get better, and they need to get better quickly. They've been. And the shame of it is, you know, Mike Trout's whole career, they've been in 3 playoff games and they promptly got swept. So I can see them saying, all right, we need to know if we're moving forward with Mike Trout or with Mike Trout. And if they were going to move forward without Mike Trout, the way to get value would be a trade, not a year from now, but to make a trade right now. And I know they didn't really want to do that, but so I could see that if there was going to be a time you would try to re-engage your superstar and try to make a deal happen, it would not be the year before the person is a free agent. It would be 2 years out so that you can maximize value if you have to trade the player, although I don't think there's anything that would have led them to trade the player. But, you know, with 1 year left on a deal, it's almost like you're a lame duck, and a lot of different things can happen. But you have to give it enough time so that the player doesn't even think about leaving. And, you know, 2 years is a long time in baseball years, and I'm sure that the Angels never wanted to get rid of him, but really now is kind of the time you would have to do a deal like this.
One more on Trout before we move on to the Phillies mailbag, Frank. I have said that I understand, and you can tell me if you think I'm right or wrong about this. So I'm giving you full liberty to tell me, Josh, you're an idiot, or Josh, you make a good point. So whatever perspective you take on it, I'm okay with. I'm not going to be upset. But my opinion, and I feel strongly about this, is I never begrudge an athlete for getting paid. You have a short window to make all this money, to change your life, to change your future, and generations to come. I'm all for that. But Frank, this Angels organization, to me, is an abomination. You were the best player in baseball, and you go to the playoffs once in his entire career with your franchise. I think that the Angels are lucky that Trout even wants to stay there because this is an organization that can't build a winner if their life depended on it.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think it is shameful that they have not been able to take advantage of Mike Trout's prime years. And in the same way that even a year ago I said the Phillies had to go for the playoffs and they made some acquisitions because you don't want to waste that really tremendous season from Aaron Nola. I honestly don't see a path forward for this Angels team the next couple of years. They're going to have to be bad for a while before they become good again because they're going to have to wait for the Pujols contract to run out. They have a bunch of guys on these one-year deals like the Matt Harveys of the world, the Trevor Cahills of the world. Like they're getting all these retreads, hoping something maybe kind of sort of will work to get them into the playoffs, and I just don't see it. So maybe now that there's this commitment together for the next 12 years, they start ripping this apart otherwise. This is what they have to do. They have to be bad for a while. They have to trade every available asset not named Mike Trout and put another core into place. Because, yes, I agree with you. It is kind of unconscionable that the Angels have not been able to win with Mike Trout.
Hey, Frank, Mike wants to know, why wouldn't the Phillies take a shot at Gio Gonzalez? He didn't even get a major league deal, and $3 million is not enough to really be an issue.
Well, yeah, so Mike, what he's asking about is Gio Gonzalez just signed a minor league deal with the New York Yankees that will pay a prorated amount of $3 million if he does make the Yankees roster. He has an opt-out at the end of April. But, I think that the issue here with Gonzalez is twofold. One, the Phillies might think that they have something better even among their own righties, even though it's not a lefty pitcher. But there's a couple things that kind of stand out about Gonzalez the last couple of years. One is that his walks have been kind of going up. He walked 80 last season, 79 the year before. And then there's the Phillies were talking a lot this offseason about consistency, and he had some really good months last season, and he had some really down months last season. But there's a stretch in the middle where, in the month of May, he had an 8.44 ERA, and in July it was like a 4.08 ERA, and then he pitched up to a 7.47 earned run average, which culminated at the end of that month with at the end of August. He ends up with the Brewers and having a nice September. But in the playoffs, the Brewers were almost afraid to use him. He actually started 2 games, and he pitched a total of 3 innings in those 2 games. So he got into a little bit of trouble, and the Brewers were quick to yank him. So maybe they didn't feel he was that steady, and you might get some greater consistency from the guys they already have, which, of course, behind Nola and Arrieta, who aren't going anywhere, maybe sticking with Velasquez, Pivetta, and Eflin. And just one last thing I want to point out is maybe this means they could get a bargain on Dallas Keuchel. If the price for Gonzalez was down that low, then maybe that means that the Phillies can get Keuchel at an affordable number that's not going to interfere with their ability to make other moves at the trade deadline. And if that's a kind of deal that the club can make, I think they'll consider it.
Dylan wants to know who's going to bat leadoff for this Phillies team. Hernandez seemed like he was the guy, but this spring, Andrew McCutchen has batted there, quite a bit.
Yeah, it's true that Andrew McCutchen did bat leadoff a lot this spring, but I do believe at the end, when it's all said and done, the season's ready to go, it's going to be Cesar Hernandez. There's 2 factors besides the fact that Kepler seems to indicate that he's going with him first, that separate him from McCutchen. I think Cesar Hernandez has much greater speed, and it's been very much unutilized by the Phillies. Maybe the new base running coach Paco Figueroa can help work with Hernandez to kind of steal some bases. He seemed like he was on the right track last year, and then we learned after the season he broke his foot and was playing on a broken foot a lot of the way. So if you can get his speed going, he's really kind of dynamic, and he's also a switch hitter. So, Andrew McCutchen can't give you those left-handed at-bats to lead off the game, which, is perhaps the matchups line up a little bit better there. And at the same time, the other lefties in the lineup will get a chance to see how to throw into the lefties. So I think that's going to be the 2 things that kind of give Hernandez the edge, though I wouldn't be shocked if the days that Hernandez is off, that McCutchen's the guy that goes in there.
Vincent wants to know if there's really a competition for the third base spot. Can Kingery potentially beat out Franco?
Yeah, I think the reason why they went into training with a couple quote unquote competitions, being in center field and third base, really was a way to try to light a fire under either Maikel Franco or Dubal Herrera. At the end of the season, Andy McPhail was just talking about consistency at the positions, and certainly for a lot of time last year, they had their moments where they were stellar, and they had their moments where they were wildly inconsistent. And I think the Phillies did not just want to hand either player a job and say, here it is, it's yours. Now, the Herrera in center is going to happen because Roman Quinn got hurt, and there really is no other competition going on there. But I think that the third base position, watching Scott Kingery play at third base this spring, I don't really think he's got the arm for it. I think Maikel Franco will give them better defense at third base, and he does have the potential to hit enough. We saw him go on a nice tear last year after it looked like he was going to lose his job forever. Given the other Phillies expenditures, that there was really nobody out there really worth adding. They kind of looked at Mike Moustakas for a bit. I think they're very content to give Maikel Franco the job at third base and see where it goes. Long term, I think Scott Kingery is still set to replace Cesar Hernandez, who is a free agent after next season. So I think Kingery is going to serve as a reserve middle infielder for now. And then next year, I do believe that he will have the second base job.
Frank Klose joins us every Tuesday for the Phillies mailbag at 3:30 here on the Sports Bash. You can check out all of his coverage of the Phillies for us at 97.3ESPN.com and follow Frank on Twitter at Frank Klose. That's Close with a K. Frank, I know you're missing Florida, but we're glad to have you back on the show today.
Always good to be on this show. Thanks, guys.